ASMR, episode 2, where today we will be colouring in Rogue from the X-Men. Okay, welcome back guys. So yes, today we will be colouring, I can't talk this morning clearly, we will be colouring in Rogue from the X-Men, who we drew in the last episode. So, a few points. Sometimes I colour in with pencils, and sometimes I choose to use these Letraset Pro markers. Today I will be using the Letraset Pro markers and Tria pens, because I want quite bold colours for this, because Rogue had a bold colour scheme, so we're going bold or we're going home. So yeah, we're going to stick with these today. I've set out my little set of colours here. So we've got the yellow for the interior of the spandex number, the green for the exterior. This is lush green and yellow. There we go. Yellow. We have this colour. It doesn't have a name, unfortunately, but we know it's Pantone 492T. We've got the poppy red for the X's in the uniform. We've got tan for the kind of fur details of the collar. We have Pantone 154T for the jacket, La Jacka, and we have Pantone Warm Grey 2T for the white parts of the hair. I'll just use it to kind of shade in the hair. Excuse me. And finally, actually, I missed. We have Pantone 475T for the skin of the face, and that's the only bit of skin we'll be showing because, as mentioned previously, Rogue's powers are a bit of a pain when it comes to touching people. A pain, well, it depends how you view that. Okay, so if I was colouring with pencils, usually I would use a biro and just go over all of these lines that I've drawn previously, and then colour in with the pencils. However, when using these Letraset markers, it's really best to ink in the lines afterwards, because otherwise, because they're quite moist, that's a really weird word to use for a pen, but they are, they will bleed the ink from the lines, and it will just smudge in and kind of create a blurry effect. Not blurry effect. Oh, use your words. A smudgy effect, which we don't want. So, yeah, we're going to go in with these first, and it's also a good idea to start with the lighter colours and then move on to the darker colours as we go. So just something to bear in mind if you're having a go with these. What's really great about these markers as well is you have two ends. You've got this end, which is more like a traditional felt tip sort of size, and then on the other side more of a marker. So a nice bit of versatility there if you are just working in an analogue style rather than using a computer, which is also fine. I just prefer this hands-on method personally. And also with these Letraset Tria markers, in addition to the felt tip on size on that side, there's also a really tiny, let's get that in focus, a really tiny little detail marker, which is super handy, and it will be for the hair actually, because I have a lot of little points around the hair which are going to be see, won't we? I had something else to say. What was it? I don't remember. Also, excuse the fact that my hand says Blu-ray. I had to remind myself of something, so of course I wrote on my hand. I don't encourage that. I do it all the time. It's really stupid. Okay, let's start with the face. So we're going to use this nice trio marker here. Nice sort of skin tone colour. Quite versatile. And we're just going to ink that in. What I'll probably do is make the lips as they are now, but with a black pen, so they will be black. I don't know why I do that, but it stopped reading as a black lip to me and starts just looking like a lip. I was doing some freelance work once and I had to draw Daphne from Scooby-Doo, and the guy who commissioned me said, does Daphne have black lips? And I thought, no, that's just the way I drew the lips. Of course he was right, and I just didn't see it. But I liked the way it happened, actually. Oh well. So, what's great with these as well is you can go over them again and provide kind of shadow detail, a shading, and they're really great at sort of going over themselves and just creating that darker tone, which is really wonderful. Very versatile. So I'll come back to that in a moment, let it dry, and what I'll do is I'll just go in on these white parts of the hair and just provide some little elements of darker shadow, just to give it some definition. It's always a good idea to shade in the lower parts. As if we can imagine the light source is coming from above. It's kind of a good rule of thumb, and then anything hanging over will be cast in shadow. It's a good rule to stick by, but of course I don't always stick by it because I forget. This is why I'm an amateur illustrator, not a professional super illustrator. Do I want this to be white as well? You know, did anyone see that the Animatrix that came out years ago? We're going to make this bit grey as well. There was that, one of the episodes in it was called Program, and it was sort of set in ancient Japan, and it had two characters, one of which wanted to defect and go back into the Matrix, and the other didn't want to, so they ended up having to have a fight, and she had this big, like, white blonde hair, and this really reminds me of that right now. I think it's definitely probably influenced me, and it's coming back to haunt me in this now. So here we are, just going over the parts I had already coloured with the first marker, and just darkening certain areas just to like celebrate the shading. Okay, so now moving on to light area number 3, we're going to do the fur details of the jacket that I drew here. So, being nice and careful to try and stay in the lines. A light hand is required here. And often you'll find with these markers is they'll dry slightly differently to how they appear when you first drop them, when you first add them to the paper, and they'll behave differently with different paper. But you want to sort of be quite speedy when you're doing your first layer, because otherwise if you let it dry too much, you'll create that shadow without meaning to. You'll create the dark areas by going over what you've already laid again. So you want to be relatively speedy so it blends nicely. Even when you add the second layer to create the shadow detail, it still blends in slightly, so sometimes you might need to go in for a third go. And if you find that some of your edges are a little bit messy compared to your original pencil detail, you can really tidy that up with ink when you go over the whole thing. I tend to use a biro because I just like the results of a biro. Very precise. You can almost shade with a biro. It's just really versatile. Obviously it's permanent, so it's a good idea to, if you're not entirely sure what you want your picture to look like, it's a good idea to go in with it over a pencil line. Okay, so there we go. We'll come back to these bits in a moment just to add this shading. Just gonna have a sip of coffee. Okay, that turned into more than a sip. I may be finishing that very soon. Okay, now we're going to go for the yellow. I should have done the yellow first, really, as it's going to be touching these slightly darker areas of the tan colour. But you live and you learn. It is yellow, yep. I'm doing this from memory as well, and I think yellow is what was in the middle here. If I'm wrong, oh well. No big deal, I think it looks enough like Rogue. You can even get a bit of a smudgy effect when going over pencils, so you just have to be quite careful not to be too heavy-handed, because that probably will encourage a smudge. And we've got to do our best not to encourage a smudge. Also translate down to the boots, because I believe the boots were also yellow. Oh, and when you know my pen is running out, what are the chances? I will outline with this side and quickly go to this side, because in my mind there's two different sides to this, but it's probably all the same thing. At least I've got a wider nib to apply with this one. Oh, how frustrating. Okay, let's get the gloves done. They are yellow too. Be careful of these fingers because they're very slim and the nib just isn't as slim. And I don't want to have to draw around them and make them look like giant sausage fingers. Not that there's anything wrong with giant sausage fingers. Okay, so go around the base of the shoe. On the base of this shoe. I have a slight air of panic now because I don't want this yellow to run out. It's just absolutely typical. I guess this is one of the benefits of doing things digitally. You don't exactly run out of digital ink, do you? But then you could lose your internet if you've got, you know. You could lose your internet, or you could lose your battery power. So, who knows? Okay. We have made it. So I think there'll be enough to go over and add the shadowing. So, yellow on standby. Back to tan. I can't say tan now without thinking of that guy from Queer Eye, who is also in Next in Fashion with the lovely Alexa Chung. listening to this, relaxing while you do your designs naturally. Okay, so we just add nice shadow details, little bits of fur, just to accent. We can use this moment as well to really kind of hammer home that it's fur with our application technique. So we've got a bit more of a dotty thing going on. Now let's go back to yellow. No, let's first have some coffee. Oh, good golly, Miss Molly, that's good. Okay, now the yellow shading, just some under the chin here. Definite, always good, natural place to pop some shading. I'll often do that just with pencil now, just add a few little lines to represent just some nice shading. Okay, now we can add a bit here to show off her abs. Some directly under the belt. Bring some in here to show the natural toning of the body, the inside of the legs. This is really starting to run out now, just perfect. You know, these pens aren't terribly cheap either, so you expect them to last forever, and it's absolutely outrageous that they haven't. But I probably had a good go out of this yellow by the looks of it. It's the first one to actually start to run out, and I've had them for years. Just some under the knee here. Sorry, big sniff. I'm a hay fever sufferer, so in the summer it's rare that I'm not sniffing. Today is not so bad though. You might get away with just the one sniff. Okay, fab. Now I think what we will do next is move on to the hair. Because we can do it at the top here, and I don't have to, if I'm colouring here a lot, then I'll be like resting on it, it'll just be a mess. So we've got this. It's quite red, but I think Rogue's hair had a slight tinge of red. So I've got to be careful now because we've got a lot of edges that I don't want to have to tidy up too much. This is the time where the really extra small nib on the end will come in handy. I'll try and get bigger areas coloured in, and what I'll do is I'll go to the edge and then neaten up the edge with the smaller nib. So these little crevices are just an absolute pain. Why do I make it so hard for myself? This is a lot easier with pencil, you know. I'm terribly sad the yellow has run out, because what a great colour. I think I'm quite happy with this colour now, actually. It reminds me of Rogue. I'm not sure it's reading as terribly red either, which is good, because I don't want it to look like Jean Grey. Not that Jean Grey had a big white patch on the front of her hair. The Phoenix. The Phoenix herself, Jean Grey. Perhaps in the comments you could say who your favourite X-Man was. I also used to be a big fan of Storm. I mean, I say used to, I also being able to summon the elements, the weather was really cool. But I think punching people and having them be rather affected by your punch was probably more alluring to a teenage boy. Or being able to fly away, just feeling useful, I guess. That's sounding a bit deep now, isn't it? Bit much. See this area here created this great blob, but I don't want that obviously, so I'll go over that again with the smallest nib on the end and around here. This is going to be a bit tricky, but it should be fine with the small nib. If it's not fine, then well, life's over, basically. Okay, got a little bit of hair poking out here. That's a bit heavy-handed, so this is all good opportunities to go over again with the little nib that has now become so famous through me talking about it. Give it up for little Nibby. Okay. Time for little Nibby to have its debut. Okay. So we'll just get the ends tapered off nicely, and then I know that when I go over it with Pyro, it can be even more sort of neatened up. Sometimes it can be hard to remember what your intention was when you look at the lines of the pencil, but just rewrite history if you're not sure what you meant to do. It doesn't really matter, it's your drawing. And there's a lot to be said for having a light hand when it comes to drawing. People always say, oh, I wish I was good at drawing. And really, I don't think it's whether or not you're good. I think, well, I guess it kind of is, but it really comes down to passion and practice. Like, I love drawing, and I always have. So, I do it a lot, and I have done it a lot throughout my life, and I'm interested in it. I don't really do much in the way of well, I wasn't very good at art at school, let's put it that way, because I just didn't care enough, which is actually something I'd like to rectify with this YouTube channel, to learn about different artists from history and current artists. I forgot what I was saying as well. God. But practice is very important, and having that passion for it. Nothing's going to replace that drive. If you want to be good, just keep going and experiment. I suppose nowadays it's ethically better if you're going to have loads of practice, probably better to try and do it digitally or get some recycled paper. Always a good idea. When I'm buying sketchbooks, I tend to try and buy the recycled ones nowadays. Just feels a little bit better on the soul. lighter shading after this, I would have been bleeding in all of these dark reddy brown, or this dark reddy brown, which would have been a bit of a pain to tidy up. Okay. There we go. Looking a bit more like Rogue now, not just some ethereal, wistful character. Coffee. It had reached that stage where it wasn't quite warm enough anymore, so it isn't so pleasant to drink. But I can't waste it. Okay. In these few moments, I feel like I may have let this dry enough, so I'm actually just going to come in and add the darker areas to the hair. This may not work, but I'm going to try, so help me. I apologise if I burp as well. Oh, this is working out fine. Try not to go too close to those pointy edges, otherwise you'll end up having to do them all over again. Of course, you may not mind that, but you can get away with not going quite up to them, I think. It's just actually looking quite nice. He says, surprised. This isn't turning out half bad. For something I hadn't practiced, I feel a bit relieved. I haven't finished yet, so I should get cocky. But this is fun. Are you having fun? I hope you're having fun. Or at least relaxing. I do so hope my viewership can relax. Or at least gain some kind of insight into the mind of an amateur DIY illustrator. Okay, fab. Now we're going to move on to the green part of the spandex shoot. Here we are with our, what colour is it? Lush green. Oh, it's so lush. Do you know, this is the year of COVID-19, and what with the lockdown and everything, I think this spring was the greenest spring, the lushest of greenest springs I've ever seen. And I think just the animals being able to do what they wanted to do without noisy traffic and people everywhere was very good for the animals and nature and trees and everything. Obviously, I'm saddened by the tragedies that have come along with COVID-19, but if there's a silver lining, I think the way that nature was able to be more uninhibited was it. Okay, careful not to bleed into the yellow. You'll notice here, maybe you can see that, maybe not. There's a bit of a break. I'm not willing to get too close here. I mean, I'll dot. But if I get too close, I might bleed into the yellow. Disaster, darling. That's what he says if it's bad. I can't remember if the headband on Rogue was green, but we're going to make it green. Oh, and I've missed a bit of hair there, so we're going to come back in with the grey and just add a bit of pop. Okay, so we've added the green. And now I think I'll just add the shading already. Because why not? I think it's dried enough. I'll probably add some black detailing of shading as well, because in the 90s cartoon there was so much in the way of black shading, and I thought it looked really cool. That was almost a burp. You're so lucky it wasn't a proper one. How horrible would that sound? Welcome, I'm going to ASMR burp to you for half an hour straight. There's probably a market for it. Oh, I was expecting the pen lid to click then, but of course it didn't. Oh god, that sounded so loud, I'm so sorry. Oh, that was the click. Minute, minuscule. Okay, now we're going in with this brown Pantone 154T Treya marker. This is going to be the jacket. La giacca. That's Italian, don't you know? Okay. Carefully does it around our detailed areas. The fur trim. Got to be respected. Obviously, it's not real animal fur trim. Rogue would never be so unethical. It's faux fur. Faux fur made in England by well-paid artisans. Being careful to avoid the X details that I painstakingly implemented. Don't draw over them, David. Okay. Here we go. The button will just colour in the same colour. That tends to be what you see in life anyway. It doesn't matter so much if the darker colours bleed into one another at these edges, because I can define it all afterwards with a pen, with the biro. And they're a bit stronger, so it doesn't really make such a big obvious looking mistake. Okay, while we wait for that to dry, I will add the red to the X's. Carefully. This would actually be handy if I had a little Treya marker nib, but I don't. Or maybe I do, but I didn't look for one. I think I can hear a dog barking outside. It's not mine. Oh, we missed this X here on the belt. Duh. I have a little black marker as well that will be handy for colouring in these X's. I also forgot the belt, which will use the same brown as the jacket. A bit matchy-matchy. What you find is when it dries as well, you can see your pencil lines quite clearly. So it's easy enough to go over them again, which is fab. Oh, that was a better pen click. You're welcome. vision. This is probably where some shadow would be cast. So add a bit here. Sorry. I got very concentrated there for a moment, and then I could hear myself breathing, which is always a bit odd when you suddenly become aware of mouth breather. Okay, now the belt. Just go in between these pocket detail bits that I've drawn. And just underneath the pocket flap, Batman belt. Okay. Now I think we're ready to go in with some black pen and some biro. Let me just reach over. So here's the biro I tend to use. These big ones have a really nice fine tip, so they're really good for illustrating. One thing to be careful of is you can sometimes get a build-up of ink on the nib, so it's always good to just colour that off on another piece of paper to make sure you don't end up with a real blobby mess. And then I've got this Papermate Flare black pen, which has this nice little felt tippy nib, but it's really good for just adding relatively fine black elements. So I'm going to use it here for the X's, and then this black sort of line that I've got running down here, and then when I'm done, as I said before, I might just add it for some shading details. Okay. Careful not to go too close to where you've added the marker, because again you might get a bleed problem, which we don't want. If you waited for it to dry for a decent amount of time, then you wouldn't have to worry at all. Obviously I'm not waiting for it to dry. I could probably do it in editing, but I just want to do it now. And when I say that, I mean I could wait and then edit it together. But that sounds like it would be a bit of a chore, doesn't it? So we're doing it now. But my recommendation is wait a little bit. Okay, so now we've added the black to the X's. That's looking nice. Now I'll go in and add this shading detail down there. I think what we decided to call leotard last time. Maybe it's a unitard. I really can't remember. I obviously never wore one. Maybe I'm missing out. Oops. Okay, that's looking rather nice. Okay, now in with the biro. In for a penny, in for a pound. I don't know why I said that. Okay. Now we'll start at the similar sort of, bashing around. Start at a similar sort of place where I started with the pencil, which will be the face. I should have cleaned off the biro like I spoke about a moment ago, but of course I forgot. There's a bit of a hair, small hair. You might find that you end up with rather messy hands doing this. Not like painting would be, but similar. Here we go with my eyes if you're not too comfortable doing that. I mean, I can look at drawing eyes properly at some point, and you can be really light-handed with the biro and actually add a bit of shading, which I like to do just on the bits where you think it would be appropriate. So underneath the eyebrows, the eye cavities. I would do some under the nose here, but I think if I did, it might look a bit like a moustache. So, you know, you've got to pick and choose. Okay, now move on to the hair, which I believe is where I went next. And this is quite fun because you can really tidy it up and have it be looking exactly how you want it to look. And you can see it all start to take proper shape as a finished picture, which is just lovely. Also, those areas where you had bleeding marker moments, you can just tidy up, which is fab. Okay. These areas in particular benefit from a good going over with the biro, because they had quite a lot of bleed problems. This is starting to sound a bit gross, isn't it? I should come up with a different word that isn't bleed. Let's think. Merge. No. Oh, I really feel like it's just going to have to be bleed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Here we go. That's the white area of the hair done as well. So we've got face, we've got hair, or white area of hair, we've got bandana, which I just did. Just add a few little touches here and there, just give it a bit more texture. Okay, now we'll move on to the brown areas of the hair. And this is where you can add like a lot of little extra bits if you want. Like little strands of hair coming off, which I quite like to do. And it also is a good way of disguising where you've gone a bit out of the lines. Obviously, I don't condone going outside the lines, but sometimes it's hard to avoid when you're using these kinds of markers. So do be careful. But yeah, you can totally trick it when you go over it with the pen afterwards, and it only adds to the effect when it comes to things like hair. You can't really get away with it with everything, but you can, you know, just freely add strands where you wish. Oops, there we go. See? You just correct mistakes left, right and centre. Obviously I'm going to be a bit more super careful when it comes to the elements that aren't the hair, because it's harder to get away with correcting mistakes. But what you're trying to do, I guess, if you do make one, is just make it so it's not really obvious, because most people won't notice mistakes. Which is great. I hope that's looking a bit different on the camera now. Oh god, and you can hear my computer fan just whirring away. Hopefully you're seeing it as some kind of lovely ASMR white noise. loved the sound of a hairdryer, and it would send him back to sleep. His lovely fiancée, at the time, I think. Well, she became his wife. But she would use the hairdryer in the morning, and he used to really like the sound of it, and it would send him back to sleep, which I thought was quite a nice idea. I think I used to like that sort of thing. You know, when you're young and you don't really want to go to school, and whenever you don't want to go and do something, it's always so much easier to fall back to sleep again. But it reminds me of like my mum or my sister using the hairdryer. Some of these areas are a little bit dodgy. Okay, generally that's the hair done. Add a few, let's be consistent and add some more little bits of hair. I hope that noise that rattled up my throat just then didn't come out on the microphone. I need to adjust myself. There we go. Okay. So now we'll move down to the neck. And as we come down to the neck, we're just going to use these little, I don't know what you call this, little curved repetitive lines to create the effect of the fur emerging outwards. And then we'll just add in some little jaggedy lines, to keep that fur impression. So some of this detail was lost when I coloured, so it's just about remembering what you wanted to achieve and replicating that with the biro. I can still see some of the little details I added, so I'll just go over them. This is just to increase that idea of fur. One thing when you're illustrating like this is to be mindful of the texture that you want to try and create. And fur is one of those ones that you can really kind of bring to life by little details. Same with the hair, I suppose. I treat them quite similarly, except with fur it's more on a smaller scale. But I guess a very similar technique used for both. So yeah, just a few little accent lines. Is accent the right word? Lines, whatever. Let's call it what it is. Lines. Or what they are, rather. Got a little buttonhole there. And I tend to add a few little repetitions of a line just to create, like if there's a crease or a gathering of some kind. Drawing a few lines together like that will create that impression. We've got our button here. I can just add in some shading lines where we went over with the slightly darker, with the second coat of that brown. This will just exaggerate the effect, which is good. I think I'm probably being quite subtle in comparison to the 90s cartoon version, but I haven't decided fully whether or not to add in the black lines to really exaggerate a lot of it. We'll see when I finish this whether or not it feels appropriate. I can tell that's getting a bit funny, so I'm just going to wipe it off with my hand. And some shading underneath chest area. Little dimple to said before, is an impossibly unachievable silhouette. But I think also, I said, like, I was influenced by Bleach, but I think also I've been massively influenced by fashion illustrations, which are always exaggerated and not really an achievable figure for anybody. But I like that sort of otherworldly alien quality, or rather like elfin, elf-like. But fashion illustrations especially are always just impossibly long women or men. I have a book of vintage fashion illustrations, moving into the more present day kind, which would be fun to look at one time. Maybe try and create our own fashion illustration of what, I don't know. Could be fun to be inspired by random objects and see what comes out. I doubt designers do much different than that, to be honest, because where the hell does new material come from? And when I say material, I mean metaphorical material, because they must get really strapped for ideas, fashion designers. It must feel like everything's been done before. What a job, though. Okay, hopefully this is all starting to look a bit more defined. Gotta be careful. This is suddenly reminding me of the Jamaican flag and the movie Cool Runnings. Just as I get down to this leg area, that's all I can now see. Cool Runnings. Oh, crud. I just went slightly out there. So we're gonna cheat that in with some green in a second. Because I made a mistake. Okay? I'm human. But that's probably a good thing to do, actually, is make a mistake, because then we can look at fixing it. And mistakes happen to everybody. Just add some shading underneath the belt here. Now, before I forget, I'm going to do that. Get the green and just dab in. Hopefully the biro will keep it in line. It won't bleed out if it does. Drawing's ruined. In the bin. Not really. Okay, now onto the boots. Stivali. No, Gli Stivali. I'm learning Italian, so I'm annoyingly repeating everything in Italian. Not everything, but probably too much. Onto the shoe. The feet that are rather too small to support somebody of this height. Like a reverse clown. Oh, lordy. Look, I'm going right inside the yellow line. Mistakes happen, okay. So, I don't think that's too much of a problem looking at it, so I'm not going to worry about it. I could make it a thicker black line to cover it up, but actually I think that might be more distracting than anything else. So, we're getting a bit of build up again. If I come to add the dramatic black lines, then I can try and fix that problem. But I'm not sure it's necessary. Oh, we made it. Just add some shading around the area where the boot sort of meets the leg. It's subtle, but I think it adds to the overall effect. Try and add a bit where we think an ankle would be. About there. Bit where the shoe some around the, looking rather clumsy there. So we're going to just add the shading around the base of where she's standing. It just adds that sort of grounding effect. So she's not just floating in air, even though Rogue totally could float in air. Okay, I think that's looking a bit more defined. Just add some shading around here because it's bugging me that I haven't. Be careful, David. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, there was a weird noise that again came through my throat. I think this coffee has negatively affected my recording, and I thought it was my friend. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'll scan it at the finished article around here. And I'm going to just sign it, because it's always good to sign your work. Shall I date it? I